All right. Welcome to another edition of Shabbat Lounge. This is Matt.
And Jake here.
And we are bringing the Torah portions.
That's right. Double.
Double portion. So this is week 51 and 52
one
right
and
there
two,
in front
yeah.
of me. And so this is coming from the end of Deuteronomy. We're close to the end of this. Deuteronomy 29, 10 through 30, 20, and Deuteronomy 31. So, Jake, what's this thing called?
So we got a couple here. We got Nitzavim, if that makes sense, and Vayelech.
So you are standing, and he went.
We're standing where he went.
Exactly.
Something like that.
Yeah. And so this is the children looking at the promised land about to go over. So, Jake, what do they need to do?
Like and subscribe and go to Sabbath Lounge and pull out the portions and check it out. If you're watching this, maybe you've already done that. But first, you should probably read it yourself.
That's right. Yep. And there is a hidden thing in this Torah portion that we have hid for our faithful and dedicated listeners. And so be on the lookout and put in the comments something that would let us know that you saw the hidden image in the presentation.
That's right.
So
we challenge you.
Yes. All right. Hopefully someone will accept the challenge. But here we go. This is week 51 and 52. We're glad you're here, and we will go through this. And remember, this is a pretty fast overview, and you need to go into it for more details, as Jake said. But we'll start with week 51, and you are standing.
Yeah. So this is, I liked this image because they're an army waiting to go into the land, and Yah's prepared them to go, exact justice for him.
Yes. And we'll read about that. Let's see. When did we read about that? We talked recently about the scripture. Is that in this Torah portion where there's a reference to maybe the Spirit or God is going out before?
Yeah, we'll touch on that on this one.
Yeah, that was in this one. Okay, awesome. All right, so here we go. So Deuteronomy 29, 11 through 12.
So your little ones, your wives, and thy stranger that is in thy camp, from the hewer of the wood unto the drawer of thy water. So, yeah, I think this is interesting because they're, well, go ahead to the next slide and it'll run into that. That thou should enter into covenant with Yahweh your Elohim and into his oath, which Yahweh your Elohim makes with you this day. So the point here was that when he's talking about these are some of the people that this is happening for, he's covenanting with the stranger that's in the camp. So that has the connotation of mixed multitude, right? That's tied in with that, and it's tied into it's not just the 12 tribes, it's the people that also were grafted in, people that joined were
the mixed multitude,
right? People adopted in to the family. So, and then Matt, when you hear this, that you should enter into covenant with Yahweh your Elohim, that he makes with you this day, what does that make you think of?
What does it make me think of? Maybe like a marriage,
like wedding language.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so this idea of renewed covenant has always been present in the text because he's constantly having to renew it, and not because of anything he's done, but it's because of everything that we've done.
Yeah, or not done.
Yeah. No, that's a real good point about that.
Yeah.
Okay. And then Deuteronomy 29:19.
I shall have peace, though I walk in the imagination of my heart. So there's, like we were saying, there's a lot to this stuff and some detail in there, but just some things that made me think of is this follow on here of how it looks to walk in the imagination of your heart. The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? So that's from Jeremiah 17:9.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And many people will be like, "What? I just followed my heart."
Yeah.
But that's terrible
And
then.
Yah knows what's in my heart.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I want to go back to the wedding thing.
Okay.
I think at some point he uses, I guess it depends on your translation that you read. In the Sefer, at some point he even uses the word cleave. So, there, anytime you see that, that definitely is a reference to the wedding, wedding language again. But anyway, and then there's a lot of talk in here about the heart. That's definitely a theme as you read through here. You'll see that, and there's the heart. But it just comes up over and over. And then Romans 1:21, because that when they knew Elohim, they glorified him not as Elohim, neither were thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened. Once again, using the word imaginations and heart.
Right. So this idea that when they were having peace about walking in the imaginations of their hearts, and he's saying that's a bad thing. Don't be peaceful about walking around in the imaginations of your heart because it leads to these bad things.
Yeah, definitely don't go around bragging about it.
Yeah.
And then Jake read Ezekiel 36:26.
So a new heart also will I give you, and a new spirit will I put within you, and I will take away the stony heart out of your flesh, and will give you an heart of flesh. You want that and heart of flesh put in you.
Yeah, and then that goes directly in verse 14. It says, "But thy word is very nigh unto you, in your mouth and your heart, that you may do it." So it's kind of interesting to tie those two together, because in one aspect we hear a lot of talk about it, in the new covenant is not fully in place yet, but there is this concept that he's trying to do this. This is something he's been actively trying to do with people from the beginning of time.
Right.
He wants to write on our hearts. That's his goal, and he's going to do it. But we can start helping him now, and start working on that. But eventually, it will happen. But he doesn't want us just to wait on.
Right.
On
He's not gonna write on a stony heart. Essentially.
Yeah. There's no point. Yeah. He's like, you just break my chisel. It's wasting money.
Right.
So
that's what he's concerned about.
That's right. That's what my dad would say. But definitely, I love that concept of the Torah being written on your heart, and that he specifically says. And so, if you haven't seen that, go read it. Read in 30:14, where he's talking about that he wants to, actively write the Torah on their hearts, right there.
Yeah, and if you continue in Ezekiel 36, it'll say it's put there so that you will do it.
Yeah, and Ezekiel 36 is just kind of an echo, but everyone goes back to Ezekiel as this thing, like it's a new thing, but it wasn't.
Right.
You see evidence of 30:14. So anyway, just check that out. And then Deuteronomy 29:24.
Yeah, so they talk about the heat of his anger, and they ask, what is meant by this heat from his anger?
I don't want to find out. I know that I don't want this.
Yeah.
It's like, how do they have that many questions about this? But like, it's going to be bad.
Yeah. I think they've seen some heat at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. It started when the sea collapsed on the people trying to get them. I mean, that was definitely a violent scene, and children were not spared from that. Mommy, what's happening with that man? Well, he's drowning right now.
Yeah.
And you're not going to help him. Actual conversation heard at the Red Sea.
Yes, first person accounts.
That's right.
Yep. So then when in this portion he asks, well, what is meant by this? And then he goes on to explain it.
And then he goes on to say, the men shall say, because they've forsaken the covenant of Yahweh, the Elohim of their fathers, which he made with them when he brought them forth out of the land of Egypt, for that they went and served other gods, and they worshipped them, gods whom they knew not, and whom he had not given unto them. And the anger of Yahweh was kindled against this land, to bring it upon all the curses that are written in this book. That's not good.
No. So that's what's meant by the anger. The heat of his anger will be against them. It's the people around will see that and say, "Eee." That's why he scorched them, because
it's kind of back to the judgment begins in the house of the Lord.
Yeah.
If you've ever heard that, he's going to judge his people first. So Deuteronomy 31 through 2,
1 through 20. So yeah, this whole section it's hard. It was kind of hard to do this one and give just high level things, because everything in here is so good. But so in here it says, when you remember his word, return to Yahweh and keep his commands.
Another throwback kind of renewing the covenant, when you renew it and remember. That's kind of a similar idea. He will gather you in the second Exodus. What do you mean by that?
Right. So it kind of goes with this previous one. When you remember his word, return to Yahweh and keep his commands, and he will regather you, basically, is kind of how it's talking. So so it has that connotation of second Exodus language here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you've never looked at that, spend some time on that. That's not a rabbit trail we're going down today, but it's an interesting thing to look at for sure, about what's the second Exodus and when does that occur and what does that mean?
Yeah, and what's that look like?
Mm-hmm. And then Matthew 15:24. But he answered and said, I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. You might have heard that before.
Yeah, so that's that ties into regathering, second Exodus, why he's even, what the point is even. It's coming to regather Israel, house of Israel that had walked away.
Mm-hmm. And then Deuteronomy 36-7.
Circumcise your heart and the heart of your seed to love Yahweh with all your heart, and you will return and obey Yahweh and do all his commandments. Kind of like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, and notice how many times he talks about the heart in this particular Torah portion.
Right.
It seems to be a theme. In fact, it's like, it seems like the name should say something about that, but that's not how they name these. They do them by the first word or something.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and you'll see also the pattern is always, while he's talking about the heart, he's talking about also doing. So there's that connection between, if it's in your heart, you'll do it.
It ain't greasy grace.
No, not greasy.
Not chicken fried grace. So that's what we should call it. Chicken fried grace.
Yeah. So
no more greasy grace. It's chicken fried. But yeah, it's a great picture of him, of you doing this, because your heart has been written on. He's written, and you've circumcised it. It's been soft, and you cut away all the stuff that's not supposed to be there. You've gotten rid of the leaven. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there when you really think about it.
Yeah, and he's telling them to do this. This is something you do. Circumcise your heart and the heart of your seed.
Yeah, and everybody talks about in the New Testament and maybe in our church communities that we grew up in, that circumcision of the heart was this new thing. It wasn't. That was the point.
That was the first
back
thing.
in Deuteronomy. That was the whole point. And if you make it about the flesh, you don't get it. And I think that's why when people make it about the flesh of bloodline, they don't get it. It's not about the flesh of the bloodline. It's not about the flesh of your skin. It's not about the things you do. It starts with what you believe and working on the inside, the stuff that no one can see, your mind, because the Bible says that the things that we do manifest themselves from something inside. If our heart is wicked, we do wicked things. We speak wicked thoughts. We have wicked thoughts. Those turn into things that we actually do. And it really is a war that starts in the mind, just like it talks about the battle is not against flesh and blood, because that is where so many problems start for us, as it starts in our minds with all kinds of things. And then pretty soon it manifests it by something we do.
That's well put.
So, and we're supposed to, if we put his commandments, then guess what? If those are in our hearts and written on our hearts, then what's going to come out of our heart, Jake? If we put his commandments in our heart, what's going to come out?
Out of the heart, the mouth speaks, right?
That's right. And I think that Yeshua is living proof of that. When he's tempted in the desert, out of his heart, the mouth spoke. And what was in his heart? Well, he was the Word made flesh. It was the Word. That's what came out of his mouth.
Yeah.
And that's what we're supposed to do.
Yeah, that's good.
Easier said than done.
Have you ever heard this statement, Matt?
Yes, I've heard people say it, and usually it'll be followed by something like, there's 613 of them. Are you going to keep them all?
We can't
Actually
keep
not.
the law. Right. That's the phrase.
I'm not supposed to keep all 613 because I'm not a woman.
Yeah. Also, the 613 is
or a child.
Not an accurate number, but it's as close as they generally get. But so they say we can't keep the law, but apparently they need directed to this Deuteronomy 30, 11 through 14 situation.
And what do you say that about the can't keep the law?
Well, if we progress ahead, maybe we'll see. It is in your heart so that you may do it. Kind of like we've been talking about.
Yeah, it definitely is used a lot here. And Ezekiel 36, 26 through 7.
Yeah, so this is the kind of all those run together, and then this is that continuation. A new heart I will give you, and a new spirit will put within you, and I will take away the stony heart out of your flesh, and I will give you a heart of flesh. And I will put my spirit within you, and cause you to walk in my statutes, and you shall keep my judgments and do them. So that new spirit that he puts within you causes you to do them.
Mm-hmm. And I think that it's an interesting concept to look at this as being an ongoing process.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he's going to do. If we're willing to do our part, he's going to help us. And I think that's where the Spirit comes into play. But we have to make this heart soft. And once we've made it soft and once we've circumcised it, then he can do his part.
Right.
But it still involves us actively doing it, pursuing it. Doesn't just happen.
Yeah, it's because, again, like we said in the last portion, it's he hasn't moved. We've gone away from him. So until we've turned or repented, is the church word, right? Mm-hmm. Until we've repented and turned back towards Yah, it's us who's walked away. So
yeah, and he keeps running after us and pursuing us the way that the father does in the prodigal son, the way Hosea continues to go after his wayward wife. That is how he pursues us. And when you think about him in those terms, it's unbelievable that it's hard to fathom his ability to forgive and to continue to seek us, and all the bad, this whole history, it's a long time.
Yeah.
Of human history, and we've just pretty much been pretty good about running away from him. And he's constantly bringing us back in.
Yeah, we're good at. We have a lot of practice at that.
Yeah, we're pretty good at it by now, and we don't need Satan coming up and doing it. It's the heart
It's in
that
the
does
flesh.
it pretty good on its own.
Yeah. And then that ties into, and we kind of briefly touched on this, Jeremiah 31, Hebrews 8. So that's, a new covenant talk. So for this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, says Yahweh. I will put my laws in their mind and write them in their hearts, and I will be to them Elohim, and they shall be to me a people. So this just, kind of full circles the whole, end caps the whole talk of, if it's in your heart, you'll do it. And he wants to write his word on your heart.
Yeah, and people will argue with you, and they're like, that's already happened. And I'm like, really? Look at the world today. Do you think this has happened? Do you think the world is there evidence of this? And, do you, maybe, okay, even take the world out. Does this happen in modern Christianity or the church? Is this what people are living like? And I don't know about you, Jake, but the churches that I was a part of and saw, I didn't see that.
Yeah.
Saw some good things, but I didn't see everyone with a circumcised heart where they've had the download and they know all of this information.
Right. And it says all will know Yahweh. So, why are you proselytizing if all know him?
That's right. Good point.
And then there's also, modern church likes to separate itself from Israel. Oh, well, we're this new entity that came about in Acts. Okay, well, then this isn't for you, because this is clearly for the house of Israel and the house of Judah. So unless you're going to graft into that olive tree that is Israel, you can't take on all the benefits and escape all the responsibilities that go along with it. But I think that's what people like to do.
Yeah, that's well said. Agreed. So that comes to the end of You Are Standing, but this is a double portion. That was my impersonation of a laser or something.
Oh, that was
an air horn. I don't know.
Only the best here on Sabbath Lounge.
That's right.
That was the finger gun outro.
Yes, that's right. And so we just ask that you go right into the next Torah portion. Since this is a double, we're going right into week 52. Yep. So week 52 is And He Went.
Vayelech.
Not Andy, but And He Went.
Oh. I'm wondering who Andy was, yeah. So I'm glad you cleared that
That's
up.
Right. Deuteronomy 31. So that does bring me to the old joke of people back in the day that sang the old hymn about going into the garden. Andy walked with me. Oh. Andy talked with me.
Yeah.
And I've heard before people were like, who's Andy?
Yeah, and why is he walking with me? Crazy right. Stalker.
So this in 31:3, there's a reference of someone going, a part of Yah himself, going before them. And so, who is this? Is this the mighty right hand? Is this Yeshua? Is this the Spirit? But, what's amazing about the story is the you part on this. There's not a you part. He's going out in front of them, and we talked about them going as soldiers to battle, but man, you talk about being, having a easy victory when someone has already gone before you and basically made it happen. And you're just like, all you got to do is walk.
Yeah. The only requirement for victory is faith in Yahweh.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's like, I got this. I'm going before you. I'm going to make this easy. And they still don't do it all exactly the way they're supposed to.
Yep. Just the way we do sometimes.
Yes, we are no different. So then in 31:6, I think you've got this scripture in here that you just have to read it. It's powerful.
Yeah. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them, for Yahweh your Elohim goes with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Then Moses summoned Joshua and said to him in the presence of all Israel, be strong and courageous, for you must go with this people into the land that Yahweh swore to their ancestors to give them, and you must divide it among them as their inheritance. Yahweh himself goes before you and will be with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. He says, don't be afraid and be courageous, like several times there.
Yeah, and it's almost like a throwback to me to the spies. He's like, remember, we were here before. We were in this exact spot. It didn't go so well
And you all got scared.
because you were afraid. And I think that's why he keeps saying it over and over and over. Don't be afraid and terrified. He's having to remind them. And then, and he talks again about how he's going before them. He's like, I've already won this. This is a cakewalk. The game is won. And in essence, that's the way we are today. The game is won, and we just have to walk in it. And we don't do a good job of that either. And then 27. So he talks again about their hearts. The theme continues. For I know how rebellious and stiff-necked you are. If you've been rebellious against the Lord while I am still alive with you, how much more will you rebel after I die?
Yeah, so this is Moses talking.
Mm-hmm.
And he's recognizing it. He's with he's on the same page as Yahweh, and stiff-necked is equivalent to hard heart, right?
Mm-hmm. Stiff-necked, is like a disobedience. It's, going against the grain. I always think of an animal. If you're trying to get it to do, for instance, a horse or a cow, if they're stiff-necked, they're not doing what you've asked them to do. They're doing their own thing.
Yeah, I kind of picture it like if you pull the reins to the side to move his head to direct him one way, but his neck is stiff and won't move, then he's going to keep going the way he wants to go.
Yeah, and then as a kid, that's when I threw my hat off and sometimes had my spurs on, and I just went to beating the snot out of my horse. And probably saying bad words.
And then he threw you off and stepped on you that time, right?
Yeah. But if you've ever had that experience, you know how frustrating that is to be on a horse. And a lot of times actually with a horse, there are some terrible horses out there, but a lot of times they've seen something. And, it's like the Balaam thing. And, that's exactly how I picture Balaam going. And, it saw something that made it stop. There's a reason. So anyway, but being stiff-necked is not a good thing.
No.
And physically, it's a bad thing. Just like this kid with a neck brace.
That's right.
All right, so 7 seems to be a big deal. Every 7 years, you read the law, and there's a debt release every 7 years, which is amazing. And, how much better would our world and our society be had we continued to do these things? And we don't have a lot of evidence that the children did these things.
Yeah.
So we know that Israel, they kept the Sabbath, and I feel like they were pretty good about keeping the Sabbath, and they were pretty good about keeping feast days. But a lot of the other stuff, it's hard to find that they did a lot of, and think about this in your livelihood, the 7-year thing, it's harder to make money if you have to release people from their debt, and that they just didn't do a good job of those things.
Yeah, I think you'd have to go back to Talmud stuff and the writings and commentaries from Jewish historian folks to find any kind of information about that.
Well, we do know they didn't let the land rest for sure, because he makes them pay for it later for every year. They had, he kept track of how many years they didn't let the land rest. And that's something you should track down and try to figure out. And also, if you've never tracked it down and you have a garden or you have a homestead and you're not observing this principle, it's something you should look into and figure out what it means. But I remember as a child, I would read about these things and I would wonder, why don't we do those things? And my grandfather didn't have a good answer. But the other thing is, Jake, do you think in a family and life today, could you practice this principle?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you are a parent and you've loaned children money, or you've loaned your brother money, or you loan your sister money, maybe you should practice this.
Yeah.
So it's definitely, it's happened in my family, and it was a real blessing. It was an awesome thing. So.
Yeah, it's a lot of times we think, well, we can't do all those things anymore, but there's a lot of them we can. So
yeah,
feed the chickens even though the ducks flew away. There's an example of, hey, go feed the chickens and the ducks, and you go up and I'm borrowing this from someone, but go up and feed the chickens and the ducks, and the son goes up and he goes, well, there's no ducks. So he comes back and the father says, well, did you feed the chickens and the ducks? And he says, no, because the ducks flew away. He's like, well, did you give the chickens some food? He's like, no, I couldn't fulfill your command, so I didn't do any of it. So just feed the chickens.
Feed the chickens. That'll be coming out soon on a t-shirt. feedthechickens.com. No, exactly. Actually, don't go there.
No.
I have no idea what that is.
We have not checked that.
So this comes to the end of 2 Torah portions and week 51, 52, and we are vastly quickly approaching the end of the year and the end of the Torah. Not the end of the year, because I believe that happens in the spring, but the end of the Torah cycle. And so, interesting enough. So that is Deuteronomy 29:10 through 31 is what we covered. So, Jake, what do they need to do?
Like and subscribe and tell your friends so you can spread the good word and read it for yourself so you know whether or not we're telling you the truth. I mean, we're telling you what we think, and so go find out what the Bible says for real.
That's right. Yep. We appreciate you being here. This is Matt
and Jake
signing off.